Next, I'm going to show you how to finish off your weaving in a couple of different ways. The first is a hem stitch. You'll need a needle threaded with either yarn or embroidery floss or something. So the first step is to bring it under either your first warp like I did there, or I actually decided to do 2 warps. So bring it through, and you'll want a fairly long piece of yarn, but you want to bring it up to the end. Now I'm going to bring it under the warps again, so I end up with a loop around those threads. So I'm going to pull it up tight, and then I'm going to thread the end through there so I get a knot. All right, next, I'm going to go through just that middle warp. This is just for the first stitch, and depending on how you've warped it, you could choose to go somewhere else here. But essentially, this is a stitch rather than the knot we just made. Now this is the actual stitch. So I'm going to go in between these 2 warps again. So it's actually what I just did. So I'm wrapping it around, but then I'm coming up underneath my wefts and pulling it up tight. All right, so that is the first stitch. From here on out, the stitches should look the same. So I'm coming straight up and under the next set of warps. Then I'm going around again and up through the next set underneath the weft threads. There, so you can see there's this vertical stitch and a horizontal stitch. So again, I'm going to go under those warp threads, which is going to create the vertical stitch. Then I'm going to go under those again and come up under the weft threads. Under, around, and through. Okay, so now what if you're like, Judy, I didn't take home a needle big enough to do this? No problem. Look around, see what you have. I found in my house a couple of bobby pins and a paperclip. So you can try out all of these. First, I'm going to try the bobby pin. So for the bobby pin, you'll put your yarn in, and I'm using the open end as my leading end, and I'm just doing the same stitch underneath, around, and through. Just be careful you're not picking up any other threads with the open end of the bobby pin. That is the danger with this. Okay, so now for the paper clip. I tried out a couple of different ways, but I landed on this configuration. It kind of looks like a giant staple. So I have 2 narrow ends. So I can put the yarn in one end and use the other end to thread it through my weaving. So now the only thing about the paper clip is it can get caught easily on the yarn. So what I ended up doing was breaking it into separate steps. just zoom out so you can see the rest of this. So rather than going through and doing 2 steps at once, I'm threading it through to the back. Now I'm threading it up and down so it goes around, and then up in my next section. Right, then down through the back, up and around, and then we'll just finish this off. So for the last stitch, I'm coming up, there's nothing to come in between, so I just go under the weft threads, and then I bring my needle, paperclip, up through that last loop. Pull it up kind of tight, and then I'm going to go around again. So down around the end and up, and then just bring it through, creating a knot. Then you can just cut it off. Next is the easier way of finishing off your weaving, just a series of knots. So first loosen the tension just slightly. You don't want to take it all off all at once, but you want to be able to get them off. So then take your first 2 warp loops. Now you could cut them apart and just tie them up separately, but I like to tie them together. It's a little extra secure, and just tie 2 double knots. Now I'm going to go to the other end. So this is the end where I started. So I'm just going to cut off this initial knot, but I'm going to cut it so that it retains the same length as my other loops. There we go. I'm going to take off the loop associated with that and hold them together as one, the next one, and tie them together. All right, and then I just go back to my other end, tie them in a knot, and I will continue down until I have knotted all of them together. Now, spoiler alert, this ended up being even for me, and you could count it before you start just to make sure it will be even. If you do have an odd number, it's not really a problem. You can either include the extra loop in with another bundle, or you can tie it on its own. Now that I have removed all of the warp threads from the other end, I can take the other side off. And that was because I wanted to maintain tension until both ends were finished. Alright, so there is our finished piece. I'm just going to cut the very end of this so that it's the same length as the other loops. And then all I have to do is weave in my ends, and this will be finished.